Madelyn, you recently published a story regarding the housing crisis and individuals who have been forced to camp on public lands. 63% of Idaho is made up of federal lands. Can you walk me through what you found in your investigation?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I found was there is an extremely steep spike in people moving to live on public lands. One of the officers, and confirmed by other officers, said around this area especially, they've seen a increase of tenfold of people living out there. So that is extremely concerning because there aren't many resources out there, and there's also, you know, a lot of areas where these people are living, there is no infrastructure. So what do you do for public services or even removing waste? So yeah, that's primarily what I found. And generally, the biggest concern among that issue is that the people moving out to public lands are gainfully employed, which is unlike what we've seen before, where, you know, it was people who might be down on their luck, or even people who just chose to live. Now it is entire families that are moving onto public lands out of necessity because they cannot afford to live in town anymore.
Can you talk to me about the legality of that? Can you get evicted from the forest?
Absolutely. So most federal public lands have a date, amount of time that you can stay there. And a lot of them are 14 days. And that is for areas that aren't necessarily camping locations, like built out with porta potties and things like that. These are locations that are just out there on public lands, often called dispersed campgrounds. These areas, that's the limit. And if you overstay it, then you can be evicted, you can be fined. One man recently up at Bridger Teton, he was fined $2,000 and evicted for 3 years from the National Forest there.
So this is not a new phenomenon. Can you talk to me about how it's evolved?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously moving out on to live on the land is not anything new. It's what settlers did when they moved out west, right? But then we've even experimented in the past, in the early 90s, on the Forest Service land in Oregon. They set up an encampment for homeless people to basically camp in the woods with services. This is not new. Even after the 2008 housing crisis, they saw a spike in people moving out to public lands then. So yeah, we've seen ebbs and flows of people moving out to public lands. And even with that, research from Forest Service researchers have found there's a wide variety of people that are moving out there. So that includes, you know, retirees who might be in RVs who are living randomly on public lands, moving around perfectly legally within the 14-day limits. You also have outlaws, a very small but constant number of people who do not want to be caught or brought in. Or, you know, seasonal laborers. You have students, you have people who are raft guides living on these public lands.
So the Bureau of Land Management addressed there are some issues with folks living in these rural areas, human waste, trash. What are some of the concerns around that?
Well, I mean, a lot of these public lands agencies feel like they're in a really difficult place because they are charged with upholding certain requirements on these public lands, making sure people can recreate, but also protecting the public lands. And so if you have someone living in an area for too long, you have things like soil compaction. You have things like human waste, which are a really big problem, and it's really challenging to clean that up. You have actual massive amounts of garbage or trailers. Trying to get a trailer out of the woods that's been rotting there and its wheels no longer turn, you know, that costs a lot of money, and it ultimately costs money for those federal agencies and the taxpayer. So they're trying to uphold what they're supposed to do in protecting the lands and protecting it for those who want to recreate, but they also are human, and they see these people out there in really dire straits. And so trying to balance those two issues are really challenging right now.
What is the plan moving forward? The housing crisis arguably is only getting worse. The lack of affordable housing is a consistent problem in Idaho. I guess, does the Forest Service, BLM, do they have a plan moving forward?
Well, they said that generally they want to work with social service agencies or anyone who wants to partner with them in any part of the state. In Idaho, there are other agencies out there, like around Bridger Teton, who've specifically said, that's not our job. Our job is to protect the land. It's not to find people housing. So different people see this in different ways. But at least around Idaho, the BLM State Chief Ranger, Becky Andrews, has said she wants to partner with organizations. She wants to get people help. She does believe it's an ebb and a flow. She does believe that, it will reduce, but other people don't see it that clear cut. They don't see this as just a short-term problem. It could be a longer-term problem.
Madelyn Beck, thank you for your time today. I appreciate it.
Thank you.